Hey, what is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors podcast. Well, guys, I'm your host, Jacob Robery, and tonight I'm excited to be back in the studio here with you all tonight. If you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you guys tuning in for the video version of the podcast. You could probably tell that tonight I'm watching a baseball game. I got a little LSU baseball in the background and back of me tonight. Got to watch my Tigers play. So hope you guys don't mind kind of streaming along the game while we do the podcast tonight if you're watching us. But if you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts and you stream us, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, we are now in studio again tonight for this episode. So now that hunting season's kind of ended, we can get back in the studio, kind of get things back to normal again. We don't have to go on the road and do so many episodes for you guys. Hopefully get you a little bit better quality on the podcast. And tonight, guys, I am excited because I have a good friend of mine that's going to be joining us tonight. And we're going to kind of be rolling off of the episode that we did a couple of weeks back where we were talking about mud boats and kind of the need and the future of mud boats in not only the waterfowl side of things, but in the whole boat side of things, whether you're a fisherman looking to maybe get into a boat for your family, or you're looking to maybe downsize from having a couple of different model boats into one specific boat that you can kind of do everything with. So tonight we're going to welcome my good friend Charlie Perilloux with Game Changer Boats. You have heard us talk about Game Changer Boats throughout the season, and Charlie and I have become friends over the last couple of years. And to be honest with you guys, Charlie is living the American dream. He basically took an idea that he had, a talent that he had for getting into the custom side of boat building, and he started his own company, saw a need and a niche in the market for, improvement on what was out there. And he took it upon himself and his family to kind of intertwine and start building a company from the ground up, and got it to where it is today, guys. And if you're not familiar with Game Changer Boats, then trust me, you're going to be familiar with them after this episode and in the coming years, guys, because they make a phenomenal product. And I really want to pick Charlie's brain kind of on, let him tell his story on how he got to where he is today with his company, and kind of his history in waterfowl hunting, his history in boating, all that type of stuff, and what led him to where he is today with his company, Game Changer Boats, that he's starting up. So I'd like to start out. I want to kind of pick his brain, kind of see how his hunting season went. So, guys, we have Charlie on the line with us. We're going to go ahead and jump into it and welcome him to the show. So let's see if we can pull him in right here. Charlie, what is going on, buddy? How you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing, Jacob?
Good, man. Good. Well, thank you for so much for coming on the show tonight. I know it's been a couple of years now. I've been trying to get you to kind of do the whole podcast thing, and I know you were kind of hesitant at some point to do it because you said you're not one of those guys that likes to get out there in the public and do this type of stuff. But now you kind of forced to, man. You got a company that we're going to be talking about tonight that we're going to introduce to everybody.
Yeah, the other day when you didn't ask me to do it, you said, "Hey, by the way, next week you're up," and I said, right. "Okay." I guess I am.
Well, the reason I had to do it that way is because I've asked a couple of times, and gosh, Charlie was like, "I don't know, I don't feel too comfortable getting and talking. I don't know what to say, this and that." And I texted him last week, like he said, and I just went ahead and said, "Hey, man, I want to get a guest to kind of roll off of this latest episode that I did, talking about mud boats and boats in general." I said, "You're the perfect candidate for it." So I said, "You're going to come on the show." And thankful that you said yeah and you agreed to it, man. So I appreciate that.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Well, good. Glad to have you, man. Well, like I mentioned, guys, Charlie is the founder and owner of Game Changer Boats, which is based right here in Louisiana. And Charlie, I guess before we kind of get too much in the conversations, kind of introduce yourself. We all know your name, but you can go ahead and tell everybody your name again. Tell them who you with and kind of what you do.
Yeah, I'm Charlie Perilloux. Company is Game Changer Boats. We started in 21, the end of 21. Build custom boats. Most of the boats we build are mud boats. However, we're not limited to mud boats. We also build, center console style and boats for outboard motors for fishing. Um, I've been building boats for probably since around 2007 on the side. And, a couple of years ago, I decided, just to go ahead and follow your dreams and see about, starting the company and seeing where we can go with it.
That's awesome, man. And I said in the intro, I told everybody listening, I said, you're really the American dream. And you hear people talk about that, like, hey, this company is the American dream. They started small, they built it, they had a mindset, they had a dream to kind of, build a product that everybody could use that might be better. And that's really, man, people that don't know you, Charlie, that's really, as long as I've known you, you've talked about doing this and kind of getting it to the point where it's at now. And to see it kind of evolve the way it did from me knowing you as a friend and you kind of getting it started and moving forward with it to where you are today in 2023, like you mentioned, it started in 2021, kind of just as something, hey, I'm going to try this, see if it works. And as we sit here in March of 2023, man, you really have a name for yourself going right now with a lot of people that not only down here in Louisiana, but you got customers as far as New York, man, that we've talked about
Right.
that you've kind of filled me in on, and we'll kind of touch on that. But
one of the things with the boats, starting it and stuff is, I get pictures from customers and whatnot that send me pictures of them duck hunting and them fishing and out using their boats, and you become friends with the customers that you have, and you just can't get that from going to a 9-to-5 job like I get from that,
yeah,
seeing people using your product and out, catching fish, doing well with ducks, and there's nothing better than that.
man, that's got to be rewarding, and it's a craft. What you do, your hands build this product, Charlie, and to see it go from start to finish, and then in their hands and hear their stories. That's got to be something that's incredibly rewarding as doing what you do.
Absolutely.
Yep. Now, you mentioned something briefly. What people don't know is that this isn't a full-time job necessarily for you at the moment, correct?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's the end goal, I'm assuming. So you're an average Joe, just like we are. Most guys that hunt, that fish, that have a family, and you have a full-time job. And then you started your company, Game Changer Boats, on the side. But like you mentioned, you've been building boats for quite some time. So kind of fill the listeners in on your history, Charlie. How'd you get into building boats or into the boat industry altogether? How did that start from your early years?
So, being in the mud boats, growing up, we've always had, Go Devils, as far back as I can remember. And the first Go Devil I think we ever had was an 8-horse. It didn't have any electric start or anything. It was pull start, and I could remember a lot of mornings at the launch on a cold morning trying to get the Go Devil started to get going, with the pull start. And then, something happened to that motor, which I can't remember because this was, I was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, right? And then we got a 9-horse, and we had that for a few years, and and then my dad bought a brand new 16-horse longtail, which at the time was the biggest longtail, the biggest mud motor that was on the market, right? Yeah. And we had it on a regular riveted John boat, and we probably used that for several years, and I think my dad had it welded on one time or so, fixing a repair. And then I could remember one day back in the prairie, we actually hit a stomp and ripped a hole in the back of the transom, and we were lucky to we made it back to the launch, and that's when my dad ordered a Go Devil boat. Gotcha. He wanted something safe for us to be in, and something well built that we weren't gonna have that trouble with anymore. And that boat, I've actually still got it at my house. It's a 1638, and it's a It's a 98 model. So
Wow. Yeah.
it's a 98 model. I was born in 89. So, you know,
Okay. Yeah.
uh, so that,
And so that boat had an 8 horsepower on it. Is that what
no,
you had
that
said?
boat had the 16. That had
16 horse.
that had the 16 on it and it had the 16 for years. We always ran the 16. Um, then eventually they came out with the 23, which
Yep.
that was the biggest mud motor at the time. Nobody could believe, like, man, 23 horse,
I know. That was you were a big shit if you were pulled
Oh
up in the
yeah,
launch with a 23. I remember that, and I'm sure
absolutely.
you do too.
Oh yeah. But so that's kind of my history of dealing with mud motors. I've been doing it my whole life, and I've also always just loved boats. I always tell people, some people, they ask the same question, like, how did you get into boats? And I say, well, some guys, like cars. I like boats.
Yep.
I'm just a boat guy. As far back as I can remember, I've just always, liked boats. And you know when I was in high school, I think when I was 16, I bought my first aluminum welding machine.
Okay.
I was actually working, at Boat City rigging boats, and I ordered a little aluminum machine with a spool gun, and that's when I started learning how to weld aluminum on my own, and started building some Pirogues. Actually, I think I probably built 3 or 4, aluminum Pirogues before I ever built a full size boat. But
Okay, so let me
you know,
stop you right there for a second, Charlie. For those of our listeners, we get a lot of out-of-state listeners. Now, if they listen to the podcast or see us on social media, chances are they know what a pirogue is. But explain to the person who may not know what that is. Being from Louisiana, we take it for granted what it is.
right?
Explain that to
Yeah,
the
man,
listeners.
you may have to help explain that one, because it's basically a canoe, right, with flat bottom with double pointed bows. Now you can get them with a flat back for a trolling motor, but um, very similar to a canoe,
Yeah.
flat bottom most of the time. I guess they do have round bottom ones that people use more for swamp type hunting, but marsh styles normally for stability, flat bottom. Um, basically some people may call them chase boats,
Yeah.
whatnot.
Just a 1 or 2 person boat, basically, to go out, get you into some areas that you can't get into with a larger boat, possibly, or maybe we use them, and I know you use them heavily down in the marshes where you hunt. And we'll probably talk. We're gonna get to that a little later as far as duck season and kind of pick your brain on that. But I mean, you use that as a major tool to go along with your boat, correct? During
Absolutely. I
hunt
don't
season.
I don't think I ever leave without one.
Well, explain to the listener how you kind of utilize a pirogue to go along. Where does that fit in with the whole boat setup, the whole hunting
So
boat setup?
for me, I don't like hunting, out of the boat. I typically hunt in the marsh, tucked in. I normally, here in Louisiana, of course, there's nowhere in the marsh that you can stand without sinking. So I generally put plywood or pallet and maybe roseau cane to build a blind, to kind of stay a little lower profile. And I hide the boat. Park the boat, 200 or 300 yards away, and then I paddle back and I just use a cover to cover the pirogue, so it's a little more conspicuous than having the boat.
Stick out where it's visible to the
Right.
birds. And going back, that's really the way. What's cool about that is that those traditions are still alive here in Louisiana, especially South Louisiana, down in the marshes, down here in the lower part of the state, and maybe there's other areas that it's like that, Charlie, but I'm not aware of any other places that utilize pirogues and stuff like that to kind of hunt the way we do here in Louisiana. But then again,
Right.
maybe I'm wrong on that. But
Yeah.
our
And
ancestors, that's going back to the traditional way of doing it that you do.
right. Well, yeah, because back then they didn't have mud motors, so they could only get as close as they could with the outboard, and they had to paddle so far to get into shallow ponds.
That's
You
right.
know.
That's exactly
Um,
right. So in high school, you bought a welding machine at 16 years old. You started building, kind of, messing around with that, building pirogues, and then from there, how did it evolve?
So from there, I actually worked for Go Devil building, boats. And just always, have had a passion for it. And, once I started working in the plants, welding pipe and stuff. And I've always done it, on the side, kind of, building homemade boats and whatnot. And,
Yeah.
and always trying to improve. Right.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
yeah, so that's been, since 2007, I think I've basically been doing that. And, and like I said, last year, just, kind of, actually, the guy at the aluminum company, the salesman at the aluminum company, he would sell me aluminum and I'd send him pictures. We kind of became friends. And,
Hmm.
he, he actually was a pretty big motivator to me. He's like, dude, I sell aluminum to a lot of people and I'll see a lot of boats, and your boats are, very nice compared to, some of the other boats that we see and whatnot. And, it actually really motivated me because I kind of always thought like, I could never do this. This is too much for me. It's not,
Hmm.
um, and
Yeah, it's
he
easy to
actually,
doubt yourself. I'm assuming.
I had a lot, yeah, and it's funny because a lot of other people have always had more faith in me than I've had, right? And
Gotcha.
and now he's just after him talk, we've talked about it a lot, and I'm like, you know what, you're right. I'm gonna go for it because this is what I love. This is my dreams, and I can't see any reason not to.
That's awesome, man. That's pretty cool. I'm a man of faith, man. And without getting too deep into religion stuff like that, I truly believe God puts people in your path that are like Him. That you met this guy through this business relationship, and bam, next thing you know, now you speaking about him on a podcast. You live in your dream, doing what you want to do, and you giving a little bit of shout out back to him and a little bit of thank you back to him. That's awesome, man. That's pretty cool. I know you pretty well, and I've never knew that story. So
Right,
that's pretty cool to
right.
hear, And that's I mean, I can see where you would doubt yourself. You talked about kind of doubting yourself, Charlie. And I think that's just human nature a lot of times because it's one thing when you building, tampering around at home, building boats for yourself,
Right.
so where you could go pill around, you could go make some hunts, go fishing. But then to start a business like you did where you're at now with Game Changer Boats and to build boats for a customer base, that's two completely different,
Absolutely.
spectrums right there. That's two completely different scenarios.
Absolutely.
So you got to have some confidence there, man. And obviously, he got you kind of motivated, like you said. You took off from there with it, and I mean, if you could explain the difference, because there are a million different boat brands out there nowadays. We talk about
Right.
that. We've had that conversation. And there's, a place in the market that years back, especially here in Louisiana, and I'm sure it's across the country like this, but guys said, well, hey, I could build a custom built boat that's maybe better than what the big box stores are producing or
Right.
the big manufacturers are producing on a level where they turn out thousands and thousands of boats, cookie cutter assembly line type boats.
Right.
Uh, so for you to jump into the custom side, not only was that a big step for you to do that and start selling your product and your creations and the customer's creations to the customer, but you also jumped into a market that was pretty well saturated with custom boat builders, so to say,
Right.
quotation marks. So let me ask you this: what in your opinion separates Game Changer Boats now that you're here in 2023? You're on the market producing boats for customers. What separates you? Let's start with this as being a two-part question from the cookie cutter boats, like your trackers, your G3s, your expresses, all those type of boats like that. What separates you from that?
So yeah, a lot of the cookie cutter boats, there's no, you get what you get, and that's what it is, right? We typically try to sit down with people and design their boat, and we have a list of basic options that we use, but like for instance, the cat, like if you want catwalks, 8-inch catwalks, 6-inch catwalks, but a guy today I was talking to, he's like, I want, can I get 4-inch catwalks? And I'm like, it's no problem. So, we can, normally we'll sit down and draw out exactly what you want, and and we go from there. But I
Yeah.
think it's pretty cool being able to somebody design. I mean, every little thing. Some people may want their seat base in a different spot, and it's not a problem just to move something like that.
Yeah. So customization is ultimately the main factor in being able to give the customer exactly what they want. That's the
Right.
huge advantage. But let me ask you this, because it's a custom built company, or you hear that term thrown around with many builders nowadays. Let me ask you this. Is it typically better materials that go into those boats? Is it typically better, electronics, equipment, all that type of stuff that goes into the actual building of the boat?
Right. So
Is there a difference there from the big box stores, in your opinion?
absolutely. So most of the like the trackers and whatnot, when you look on their website, they use 5052 grade aluminum for the hull, which is a softer grade of aluminum, and we use 5086 for basically the hull and transom. It's a little harder, so you can't bend it without cracking. So like for boxes and lids and whatnot, we do use 5052, but the hull material is a little harder to for hitting stumps and whatnot in these mud boats it won't dent as easy as the softer grade aluminums. And
Gotcha.
it's a little bit more expensive aluminum, but you're getting a much better product in the end.
And I agree with you. You typically are, but what we've discovered, and you and I have had these conversations, is does custom mean automatically that it's more expensive than the big box stores boats that are out there?
Typically, I don't think so. I guess it depends on really how custom you go and how much you add, and that's one thing that I'm trying to do is keep it to where, we have a basic boat that is, you know, plain Jane boat that somebody can afford, the average guy can afford, easy. But we also, offer, a lot of options. And like I said, we can kind of build whatever. And then you start adding the C deck and whatnot. And the price definitely does go up. However, those are options that are not even offered with box store type boats. But I still want to keep the basic model boats to, for the blue collar guy that is just, wanting to go run hoop net lines or whatever on the river, and, be able to have something affordable.
Yeah. And that's a very good point. I'm glad you made, because last episode that we did, I talked about kind of a need in the market for mud boats, or maybe smaller aluminum boats, that type of stuff. Because with the economy, Charlie, the way it is, with inflation as high as it is right now, and you and I have talked about this. We have even ran the idea, hey, you asked me, hey, what do you think about producing a smaller boat, something that's affordable for the average working man, like you mentioned just now.
Right.
So, in my opinion, I think that the style of boat business that you're in has an extremely bright future, because I think a lot of customers are starting to scale back. Guys that may have had 1, 2, maybe even 3 boats in some instances, one for hunting, one for fishing, one to kind of go saltwater fish and do whatever. I think guys are having trouble, families are having trouble affording to maintain 2 or 3 boats. And now they're looking to downsize something, or not only necessarily downsize, but kind of downsize the number of boats that they maybe have in their arsenal at home. And you have companies like you at Game Changer Boats that can offer those customers a kind of one-shop, do-it-all type boat, right?
Right.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you see the market in what you do, customization of aluminum boats, mud boats specifically? Where do you see that heading into the future from a business owner's perspective?
A lot of I guess years ago the mud boats were pretty much strictly people use them strictly for hunting season. And then once hunting season was over, they were in the garage for the rest of the year. And and now, a lot of these guys, I mean, almost every boat that I build gets a trolling motor bracket, at least. Some guys put a trolling motor on later, but everybody puts a bracket on because, that boat's, a lot of those guys that use that boat all summer for fishing. And then the other thing now is you've got a lot of these mud boat runs. People just, want to get out on the mud boats on Saturdays during the summer when it's ice and get together and everybody's riding. It's just the market has changed. And I guess a lot of that is because, like I said earlier, we had 16 horse engine, and that was the biggest engine they made at the time. And I don't think anybody was, they weren't joyriding with them. But now we've got these bigger motors that are faster, and we're running more towards, stock engines, 30 miles an hour. And they're, you get a little bit more speed, you can cover more water, and a little more enjoyable. They're a little easier to drive than the longtails were. And people enjoy, going out and running them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they so much more comfortable. I made the switch, and this, and all the listeners that follow us, they know we made a switch from a longtail this year to the surface drive. And man, I can't tell you how much less wear and tear I had on my body from the old 35 longtail that we had.
Right.
But with that being said, what's your opinions? Do longtail motors still have a place in the market? With all the new surface drives that are out nowadays, your Gator Tails, your Go Devils, all these brands that are coming out with these surface drives, where do longtails still fit in your opinion? I'm kind of interested to get your take on that.
Like we hunt a lot in the swamp and Marpaw Swamp, and it's some pretty rough terrain, and a lot of the trails, they grow up with float-on over the summer, and some of these trails are, they're only a couple feet wide, so you can run. I still feel like, with the longtails running a narrower boat. I had one recently that was a 36-inch bottom with a 23 on it, and using those boats in the swamp. I still build several boats like that for guys, 36-inch bottom, and a lot of times they're round chom for running, that timber type area. That I think, a lot of times with the surface drive, maybe when you get stuck, you don't have as much leverage as you do with the long tail, and they typically work good in that area.
Gotcha. And I agree with that. There's definitely a place for them still, in my opinion,
The other part of that is there's some guys that hunt, they may have a lease where they leave the boat in the water and they don't run far. They may only run half a mile to a blind. And, they're half the price of a surface drive, right?
Yeah, good point.
If you're not running far and you're just idling to a blind, but it's shallow water, and you still need a mud motor, maybe it doesn't make sense to to spend the money on a surface drive where you just, can save a little money, get the longtail, and it does everything you need to do.
Yeah. And your company, Game Changer Boats, you could build. Have you built any longtail models since you've kicked it up in the last couple of years?
Let's see. I built probably 2 last year.
Okay.
And I know for sure, like right now, I've got a guy that's interested in. I think that's what he wants, a 1736, and I think he's going to get a 23 longtail.
Okay, awesome. So I guess the point there is that you could build. Whether a guy's looking for something, maybe, higher end or lower end, you could build a longtail setup for a customer. Absolutely. Just like he wants it set up, the length he wants it set up. So really, it's a do-it-all type stop with Game Changer Boats.
Right, and that's the thing. We want it to be affordable for the people that like this guy. He's he doesn't even want his boat painted. He's like, look, I want an aluminum hull. I don't need anything. I'm just trying to keep the cost down. Can you do that? And yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Take it as far as you want,
Now, Charlie, you mentioned something. For those who may be in the market right now, they may be shopping for a boat, or maybe this coming hunting season that they're kind of new, because there's so many young waterfowl hunters coming to the sport now that we talk about that, and we've talked about it in previous episodes. A lot of young guys, a lot of your customers, for that matter, or a lot of younger guys that are getting into the sport. They're graduating from high school. They get that first big job at the plant or wherever they work. They're making money. They don't have a wife, don't have kids yet. They're going to go out. They're going to buy them a truck. They're going to buy them a boat. So they're going to come see you, and they're going to do that. So that's something that's probably pretty common. But for those people who don't know, you mentioned a round chine versus a different style of build a while ago. So if you don't mind, without getting too technical with all that, kind of explain the difference between round chine versus other designs and what fits each application a little bit better.
Right. So the round chimes are basically, it's flat bottom, and the way we build them is the sheet is laid flat, and we weld the ribs in, and we weld the transom in, and the transom's got the curve on the edges, and we actually pull the sides up with come-alongs. So what that does is it gives you a gradual radius on each side,
Gotcha.
And those boats typically handle a little better. They the turning, there's no slide to them, and running in the swamp, it's a little better rolling off of stumps and whatnot. The
Gotcha.
other style that we build is a square chine, where we actually bend the sides up. They do typically run a little faster. However, they do normally have a little slide to them. Now, all these boats that we build for mud motors don't have any corrugations or V-crimps on the bottom to prevent hanging up on any kind of stumps or mud.
Gotcha.
So, like typically, if I build one that's for an outboard, I'll put crimps in the bottom, and that'll help with tracking and slide.
Okay. Now, traditionally that's some good information out there for you guys who may be in the market and you hear round chine, square chine, because I know in my business where we sell mud boats, we get that question pretty often. They're like, man, I hear guys talk about round chine versus square chine. What's the difference? What should I choose? And to hear you explain it, that definitely is some good information for people right there. So that's a good thing. And other areas that, you are not only focusing on in the mud motor side of it, but you are also building fishing boats as well. So for customers that are looking that maybe don't duck hunt or don't hunt with a mud motor setup, and you want an outboard motor setup, to go fishing, then Game Changer Boats has something for those guys as well, right, Charlie?
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, typically what we do is you can build the same style boat, but what I like to do on an outboard is put, about 4 crimps in the bottom of the hull to help with sliding, and it'll, you'll have a lot better maneuverability with that hull with an outboard motor.
Gotcha. And when it comes to the outboards, what's your offerings there? Do you have offerings from different motor manufacturers? Whenever a customer comes to Game Changer Boats to build a boat, how does that procedure typically go, Charlie, from a start to finish type situation for a customer?
Right. So currently, I don't sell any motors currently. That's something that I'm going to be working towards in the next year or so, trying to get maybe one mud motor line and one outboard line that we can offer as a package deal. Typically what happens is some customers have motors already, mud motors or whatever, and they or some customers they buy them from from y'all or another dealership, and I'll generally I'll go pick up the motor and put it on the boat and wire it out and rig it, so whenever they pick up their boat, it's water ready.
It's water ready.
I do sell McLean trailers. I'm a dealer for McLean trailers. So, we've got the trailers and the boats covering. Normally, just the motors come from different places.
So you could deal the trailer, you could build the boat. The customer just picks what manufacturer outboard that they want to go with. They purchase it from a dealer. You could have it picked up. If I'm assuming if it's local,
Right.
Or somewhere right around where you build the boats. And
now
then
the only difference with the outboards is normally typically Mercury, Yamaha, they require the motor to be installed by a certified technician. So generally they'll what I'll do is I'll run the steering system. If it's hydraulic steering, I'll run the steering and I'll wire the boat, and then we'll bring it to the dealership, and they'll have it installed by their certified technician for
Gotcha.
really for warranty purposes and whatnot on that motor, to make sure it's registered through that company with warranty.
Gotcha. To make sure it's done right. That makes sense. So that's a good thing,
Right.
So, other aspects, if somebody's looking at purchasing a boat with Game Changer boats, other aspects, what do you have available to the customers now for them to kind of go check out, options that are available? Because you talked about some boats having stock models on them. Do you have a website? How does that work? I know you were looking to invest into a website. Is that something
Right.
that's up and running now?
Yeah,
Kind of explain that to the listeners.
So actually, yeah, we do have a website. It's up and running. It's gamechangerboats.net. And
Okay.
my brother actually built it, and I think he did a really good job putting it together. We've got an estimating tool in there for flat boats right now, where either flat boats or mud boat style hulls. That's got a list of different hull sizes and different options that you can go with, and kind of give you an idea of price, where you would be at. We're going to be working on soon putting a estimate, for like a V hull bay boat style, because we have built a few of those, built a couple of those last year.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have Facebook page and Instagram. There's tons of pictures on Facebook and Instagram. Still working on getting a few more pictures uploaded to the website, and I want to put a section for custom fabrication, and also want to put a section for customers actually out using their boats, and that send me, I get pictures from customers all the time out in their boat, and I'd like to upload a lot of that to the website too. So
Yeah.
I think that'd be
And
pretty
that's an
cool.
interesting question. Every guest I have on the show, especially business owners, people that are influencers. Charlie, I know you said, you hesitated for so long to kind of do a podcast or do that type of stuff because you didn't feel comfortable. But now that you have a business and it's out there and it's growing, how important is social media to your business, in your opinion, right now?
Very important. I think most of the sales that you get are people that that found you on social media, Facebook, whatnot, and contact you. Because last year I built a boat for a guy in New Jersey, and he that's how that went. He ran across my Facebook page and then gave me a call, and right there he was like, okay, I want one. When can we have it?
Yep.
you know
And it's amazing, man. I mean, social media can be a curse sometimes, I know, and a headache. But as a business owner, I always say, you got to have it. You got to get involved
Right.
with it. The society is just kind of forcing you into it,
Absolutely.
and
Right.
but I mean, it's I hate to use the term free advertising because nothing's free. You know that.
Right.
And all the listeners, that it costs us time. It costs us time away from our families when you own it. All that type of stuff. It's going to cost you at some point in some aspect or another. But being on social media for a business, especially like yours, a smaller company that's up and coming, making a name for itself, I mean, man, it could absolutely launch you, bring new customers to you, word of mouth from that point on. It just kind of snowballs and grows. And I think you probably experienced that from conversations that we've had. And you just mentioned an example of that, how much it's kind of brought business to your name brand,
Yeah. And that was something that I had to, it was a learning curve for me, because I've never really been a big social media guy. But it's part of it, and you have to do it, you
Yep.
know.
Yep. I agree with that 100%. Well, man, it's excellent talking about the business side of things, about Game Changer boats. There's so much that you guys have to offer. You guys could tell from the conversation we're having with Charlie. But now, Charlie, we're gonna kind of shift gears a little bit, unless there's something else you want to bring to the customers' attention and the listeners' attention. But man, I'm curious to know, which I kind of know a little bit about it, but let's talk duck season this year. 2022-2023 season. Overall, a scale of 1 to 10, Charlie. What would you rate this past season?
Jacob, honestly, I would have to probably be somewhere 9 if I had to rate it myself. I don't know if it was really a good year, if I was just really lucky this year. But I had
Maybe a little bit of both. Maybe a little bit of both,
maybe a
huh?
little bit of both, but I had a phenomenal year. We started out in November, opening morning, it was hot and mosquitoes and whatnot. And, you know, but we hunted that morning and I think we killed a 3-man limit of gray ducks and down towards the Hopedale area. And from there on out, it was just pretty much steady limits all year.
That's awesome, man. I know
Did
you had
most
a jam up here for sure.
Right. So I had, did most of my hunting in Hopedale. I was fortunate to get a small lease in Pearl River this year, and made I think I probably made about 4 hunts out there, and 3 out of the 4 were, I would say, above average hunts. One hunt was, it wasn't a total bust. Killed 3 or 4 birds, but I it's how it goes sometimes, right? Can't get them every time, but
That's exactly right. That's exactly, and I think the lease kind of surprised you at some point this year because
right,
you kind of jumped into the lease. You and a friend of yours, if I'm not
right,
mistaken, you had told me the story, and you said, "Man, we kind of picked up this lease, and it, wasn't real expensive. We got it just to have a place a little closer to home. You have small children now. You have a son coming up that you're trying to start
right.
taking out and doing some hunting with, and you said it'd be perfect to take him out, do a little bit of hunting." But at one point, the first couple of hunts, you called me and you're like, "Man, we did pretty well." And the species of birds you were killing, you were surprised with, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what's odd to me is it's really only on the other side of the lake is where I typically hunt, and where I typically hunt, we basically kill gray ducks, and gray ducks.
That's right.
And maybe a couple teal here and there, but you go to the other side of the lake. I killed gray ducks, blue wing teal, green wing teal, widgeon, killed a couple mallards, pintail and model ducks,
Yeah, great ducks. I mean, great
yeah,
species of ducks.
great ducks, and only 12 miles apart on the other
Yeah.
side of the lake, and sometimes I wonder, like, why is the species of ducks totally different on one side of the lake from the other?
What's
You
your
know,
thoughts on that? I mean, what?
I
Because
have
I've
no
heard that
idea.
before from guys.
But I've hunted the Pearl River in Hopedale, which is on the opposite side of the lake, and then in between you've got like Bayou Sauvage area,
Mhm.
towards Chef and the Chef Mentor and stuff, and that and that's the same thing. They're killing a total different species of ducks over there. Now most of the Bayou Sauvage is youth hunt only, so unfortunately I'm not able to hunt it right now. I got a
Yeah.
couple more years before my boys start going, and then we'll be able to hunt that area as well. But you know,
And
um,
that's a good point, Charlie. I don't want to cut you off, but the Bayou Sauvage area, do you know any details on that? Because a lot of people are not aware of that area, kind of what it's designed for, who can hunt it. That I know, without getting too specific, what's
right.
the general purpose of
So,
Bayou Sauvage and the
so
availability to hunters?
yeah, Bayou Sauvage is a national wildlife refuge. It's not a wildlife management area, and some wildlife refuges you're allowed to hunt on. Some there's no hunting at all. But Bayou Sauvage, they happen to have the rules set at it's youth hunt only all year round.
Okay.
So, but what that means is the adult can participate in the hunt. So if you and your son go and he's 16 or under, you can both shoot. So it's not like a typical youth hunt where the adult can't shoot, and the adult can have, I think you're allowed two children per participating adult.
Okay. So that's a scenario where the adult could actually hunt with the children, you
Right.
saying?
Yep. The adult can shoot, but if you
Okay.
don't, if there's it's youth hunt only, so you can't, me and you can't go and make a hunt, unfortunately. But I think it's a pretty good area because it's pretty restricted.
Yeah, and I
You
was going to
know,
ask you,
not
like,
much
how is the
pressure.
hunting in that area? I've heard people talk about it, but it's
I've
always seems
heard.
like it's kind of on the down low when they're talking about all Bayou
Right. I
Sauvage.
just think that there's just not a lot of pressure and there's just not a lot of people hunting it because of the restrictions. But the people that I know of that have hunted it in the past have, have done really well, and I've heard a lot of good reports from that area.
Really? Yep. Yeah, I've kind of heard some positive things about it too. So that's pretty interesting. So guys, if you got a youth hunter that's coming up, look it up, Bayou Sauvage, and maybe some people know about it. They're going to hate us after this, Charlie, because we kind of spilling the beans on this. But man, we're at the end of the day, we're here to help everybody out. And if you could get a youth hunter involved in hunting, in waterfowl hunting specifically, man, there's nothing better in my opinion than that. So check out that. Bayou Sauvage, that's something definitely to look forward to. But yeah, like I said, this year, 9 out of 10, that's a strong number. And if I was in your shoes, Charlie, I'd rate it a 9 out of 10 as well, because I know what type of season you had when I
Right.
asked that
And then,
question. And
the end of the year, I was able to make a trip to New Jersey to go hunt with a customer,
I wanted to
which
ask you
was
about that.
yeah, which was an awesome experience.
Tell us about that. How was
So,
that compared to Louisiana?
so the main reason that I wanted to go, well, two things is one, because it's always fun to go somewhere different and see something different, right?
Definitely.
And the other thing is, I've never killed a black duck. I don't know if I know anybody that's ever killed, a true American black duck. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just, on my list to do. After talking with my customer friend of mine now that, and he's like, man, if you want to kill black ducks, just come to my house and we can kill black ducks. So I planned a trip and actually, flew into New Jersey and, we hunted 3 days and, did exactly what we said we was going to do. And we actually, hunted the ducks in the morning and killed, the limit's only 2 on black ducks. But we were able to kill our limits of black ducks in the mornings, and in the afternoon we actually went and killed brant. So that's
Okay.
another species that that we don't have around here.
No, you won't see that in Louisiana. That's for sure.
No.
So how was New York, man? When I know the answer to this, but I want the listeners to you kind of give your take to the listeners, because New York's not a place typically when you hear or you think of traditional waterfowl hunting and
Right.
phenomenal waterfowl hunting. New York is not one that anybody probably down in the South, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, any of the southern regions ever thinks of. You hear about Kansas, Arkansas, you hear about all these spots, but nobody really has a lot of knowledge of as far east as thinking about New York as being a good waterfowl destination. How
Right.
was that? What I guess when you got there and you got out there to where y'all were going to be hunting, what kind of surprised you the most, or did it surprise you? The terrain,
So
the style
the
of
first
hunting, that
thing
type of stuff.
that surprised me was the tide. They have a tide of about 6 foot over there.
Okay.
So the first morning we get to where we're going. Now it's still dark, right? So I still haven't seen any marsh yet because I'm riding in the boat in the dark, and we get to where we're going, and John says, um, he says the ducks have been kind of hanging out in this little cove. He said, I think we're going to hunt this little cove today. The wind's not perfect for it. But at the end of the day, the ducks have been wanting to go here. So I want to go here too. And I was like, okay, well, me too, you know?
Smart man. He knew where the birds were.
So, but when he started throwing the decoys out, he was literally throwing the decoys out on a mud flat. And I'm
Okay.
thinking to myself, and I said, John, I said, typically in Louisiana, we hunt over water, you know? And he said, don't worry about it. He said, there'll be water here by the time daylight comes. And I look at my phone and I'm like, okay, that's 10 minutes, 10 minutes till shooting time. You're telling me we're putting decoys out on mud and there's going to be water here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And within 5 minutes, all those decoys were floating.
Good
Yeah.
God. That's
Yeah.
different. That's definitely different in Louisiana.
Right. And then the other thing was after a couple of hours, because we had blinds on the edge of the marsh grass. And
Okay.
after a couple hours, we were actually moving our blinds back because the water was starting to come into the blinds because
Oh,
you know,
wow.
it had rose, in 3 hours time, it rose 3 feet.
Yeah, that's insane, dude.
Yeah,
that's something that, yeah, you never experienced down here for sure, you know?
right. And one of the things that I learned, because a lot of that area, they have a lot of public land over there. And one of the things is like, well, man, it seems like it'd be so easy to drive over here with a boat and go kill black ducks. But I learned real quick, if you didn't know what you were doing over there,
Mhm.
it'd probably be a bad day for you, because when that tide falls out, you think you're running in a bay that looks like as big as the Mississippi River with a current flowing, and but it's only 2 inches deep, and it's sandbars. You know,
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah.
I
You can
mean,
get in some trouble quickly.
you could get in trouble quick.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
That's pretty cool, man. I mean, you ended up getting the birds that you were going after. I'm assuming you're going to mount a couple of birds that you harvested on that trip.
right? Yep. I actually I brought 3 black ducks and a brant home with me. I actually was able to. But yeah,
You're laughing because I want you to tell that story, if you don't mind. Tell that story. Okay, so you flew. So before the trip, you shipped ammunition and gun over there to
no,
him.
so I,
Is that what you
I
did?
flew with my shotgun. Flying with the
Okay.
shotgun is not, it's not too bad. You basically just check it in like you check in luggage. But one of the things that I learned is you can go to Walmart or wherever and get TSA approved locks. So you can actually put a TSA approved lock on your gun case. It's got to be a hard case, and I think there's a slot for a key that TSA has. If they need to look in it, they can open it without calling you back to the counter or whatever.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so I flew with my gun. I did order some shells and ship them to New Jersey before I got there, just because I thought it'd be a little easier and I wouldn't have to, worry about packing ammunition as well on the plane or whatever.
Definitely.
So I did that, and on the way home, because I asked John, I said, "Man, I'd love to mount a black duck." I said, how do I do that? He says, yeah, you get a soft cooler, and you put it in. We'll freeze them, and then put them in the soft cooler, and just bring it as your carry on the plane. I'm like,
Okay.
okay, yeah,
So
that's
you got
gonna
a
be
whole duck in this soft cooler, try
got
to
a
bring it
hold
back
up.
on the plane.
Yeah, I actually wind up with three ducks and a brant, you know. So I've got these ducks in a soft cooler. So when I get to the airport in New Jersey coming home, I check in my gun and my bag, and I've got my backpack cooler with my ducks in it. And I'm a little nervous. I don't know what's about to happen, right? So luckily the airport that I flew into was a very small airport. So I get to the security line, and there's actually nobody in line, not a single person in line. So I'm
Okay.
like, okay, this is good, because I know they're going to question me, and this could get embarrassing pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
So I put my bag on the conveyor belt for the X-ray machine, and I go through through the other side, go through the metal detector, and I hurry up and go, because I kind of wanted to see the X-ray machine to see what
Hmm.
it kind of was going to look like coming through.
You were
And
curious.
yeah, so I the guy's looking at it, and I see it on the screen, and he's looking at it, and he's trying to figure out what's in this bag. And so then he looks at me, he says, "Is this your bag?" And I'm thinking, well, I'm the only guy
I'm the
here.
only one in line.
Yeah, so yeah, it's mine. And he says, "What?" He said, "Sir, what do you have in here? Yams?" And I said,
Yes.
"Yams? Like sweet potatoes?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "No." I said, "But I'll go ahead and give you another guess." And he
You're lucky
says,
they didn't tase you on the spot right there.
"Probably so." But I figured I might as well have some fun with it at this point, right?
Correct.
So so he says, "Is it a rooted vegetable?" And I said, no. I said, it's not a rooted vegetable. And he said, is it a meat? And I said, yeah, I guess, yeah, you could consider it a meat. And so then I told him, I said, it's ducks, they're whole ducks frozen. So he gives it to another lady and he says, hey, we've got to search this bag. So I was like, okay, here we go, So
Yep.
she actually gets the backpack and she's unpacking them and she's got to take every one of them out individually because they're wrapped in garbage bags too. So
Oh
she's
my
got to
God.
take them out individually. And I don't think she's ever seen, a dead animal before in her life because she was disgusted.
They thinking they probably called the next Jeffrey Dahmer at the airport.
Right, right. But yeah, she was she had to wipe them all down and she was making all kind of noises and whatnot the whole time. And put it in a machine checking for gunpowder or whatever they check for. And and then they packaged them up. And I told her, I was like, I don't mind putting them back in the bag. And she's like, no, I have to, it's protocol. So she packs them all back in the cooler for me. And and that was the end of it. I got on the plane and, put them
Flew your
put
ass
'em in
back
the
to
hotel,
Louisiana.
headed back to Louisiana.
You made that lady gag and probably throw up after she checked all that in.
I asked her, was this the first time you've ever done this before? And she said, yep. I said, okay, that's good. You can go home and tell your husband you got to, do something different at work today.
Man, I laughed when you told me that story. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "I can only imagine," because everybody's already nervous, kind of, unless you fly constantly. Most people
Right,
kind of get tense when you got to go through TSA and all that. Seems like you just want to try to make it through there and get on by. And
right.
to have that, I would have been pretty nervous if I'd have been in your shoes at that point. But that's a funny story, man, and that was just kind of a great way to kind of end your trip there to New York. But I mean, was it everything in New York, the hunting wise, that you thought it was going to be? I guess it was. You went there, you
Right.
had a
So,
good experience, and you brought some birds home that you were on your bucket list.
right. So in the area that we were hunting, it was basically, it was black ducks and brant were the only two species out there, which I was okay with because, John was like, we can go hunt somewhere else and kill some, teal and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I was like, John, I mean, we kill teal and stuff at home. I want to kill, black ducks and brant. So it's one of those trips, and with the limits of black ducks being two and the limit of brant also being two, it's not one of those trips where you're gonna go and
Yeah. Limits,
kill
just limits of birds, different type of
yeah,
species.
limits of birds, but it's really, I guess, the appreciation of going kill something different and going hunt somewhere different with new people, good people, and having
Yeah.
a good time.
Yep, yep. That's awesome. And that's what it's all about, man. It's like you said, that was a customer that bought a boat from you in New York, of all places. Bought it from a guy down in Louisiana building boats, found out about it through social media. And now, Charlie, y'all probably going to be lifelong friends. And you were telling me about this guy. And we were talking about maybe even trying to get him on a podcast episode because this guy is not your typical waterfowl hunter, is what you told
Absolutely
me.
not.
And kind of explain what I'm talking about there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so John, he went, when he first contacted me, he said, I want this boat. I hunt a lot. I typically hunt 60 plus days a year, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've kept a log some years and I consider myself to be, pretty avid duck hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of years I might make 15 hunts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over the 2.5 months of hunting season. So I'm thinking, he hunts 60 days a year. You know, that's a lot of hunting, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, you almost don't know if you really believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But then after this year, after the hunting season, and matter of fact, what's today? March.
We're March
8th?
8th or 9th today.
Yeah, he's still hunting.
And you
He's
sent me
in,
some pictures of him
yeah,
today, right?
he's in Mexico right now, hunting. He started his season in Canada and spent
Okay.
3 weeks and hunted mornings and sometimes I guess mornings and evenings in Canada for 3 weeks straight.
Good Lord.
And then, and then as he came down, I think he maybe hunted South Dakota and then hunted the New Jersey area. But he hunts, he hunts probably at least 5 days a week.
Good
Sometimes
Lord.
morning and afternoon, sometimes afternoon, sometimes just mornings. But
That's
yeah,
ate up with it. That's what we call here in Louisiana, ate up with it big time.
right. And that's
Yeah.
what I told him. He sent me pictures yesterday from Mexico, and I was like, John, I've never met anybody like you. I mean, I would be burnt out by now.
Man, I tell you, starting that early, especially the traveling, the miles he's done this year, and God, man, I think I love it, and you think you love it, but like you said, at the end of the season, there's a point that you kind of like, I'm ready for it to kind of wind down, just to
Right.
kind of build that energy back up and that excitement. And usually with me, about a week off, and I'm like ready to go for the next season. I'm kind of
Right.
just fired up again. But to go like he's gone all year long, travel from country to country, hunting like that, you gotta love it a lot, man. That's like doing it as a profession almost.
Right.
That's different. That's a different breed, man. That's awesome though. To see somebody that passionate about waterfowl hunting and to be that much into it, that's you gotta admire somebody like that as a fellow waterfowl hunter.
Absolutely. Because, I think every year come, even the beginning of January, me and you, talk, and it's like, man, I'm tired,
Yeah, exactly.
burnt out. Because,
Exactly. You hit a
especially
point.
making these trips down to Delacroix area and stuff, we get up at 2 in the morning and drive an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to turn around a lot of times to drive home that afternoon or sometimes that morning. I mean, we had, like I said, we had a good year. We're fortunate. And there was a lot of times that we were back home by 10, 11 o'clock and
Correct.
had did 4 hours worth of driving that day.
Correct.
You know?
Really, the hunt is the shortest part. When you look at it,
Yeah.
you're on the road most of the time.
Right. It's and that can get exhausting,
Correct.
driving that. So yeah, somebody that hunts that much, man, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
I
You
don't know how
got to
you
you
do
got
it.
to admire them. So, did you kill? As we're getting close to wrapping up here, did you kill any birds this year that were other than the trip to New York here in Louisiana? Anything special that you're going to be mounting this year, or any bands? I know you've had some good luck with some bands
Yeah,
over the
no,
last
this
couple of
year
seasons.
I haven't I didn't kill any bands this year. Other than the black ducks, that'd be the only thing that I would say in the black ducks and the brant, of course, that was out of the normal.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, well, actually, so after the freeze, we actually did well, here locally with mallards, which we don't, we don't shoot a whole lot of mallards, a couple a year here and there, but once it got cold right before Christmas, we actually had a couple good hunts and really did well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people shot mallards this year that haven't shot mallards before. We did have more numbers of mallards show up in the state. Not that it was anything significant to brag about, but I think guys were able to harvest a few this year. Which, like you said, Charlie, it's just you don't see them like we used to back in the day.
Right.
Gadwall's the new mallard. I say that all the time here in Louisiana,
Absolutely.
and I think you would definitely agree with that because that's probably most of your bag limits, is Gadwall. You even said that a while ago. But, people are always interested in our guests as far as what equipment they use, that type of stuff. What shotgun does Charlie Perilloux shoot during waterfowl season here in Louisiana?
So I've for the last few years I've shot Brownings. I like the Browning. I had a Browning Silver. It's that's a gas operated semi-automatic. And man, I really love that gun. It was good to me. Still a good gun. I still have it. I have to do a little work getting the choke tube. One of those choke tube got stuck in the saltwater
Oh
marsh.
yeah, rusted it up, got
Um,
it stuck in there.
yeah, so I learned that now actually pretty much after every single hunt, I take my choke tube out and grease it. But a few years ago, I wound up getting the Browning A5,
Okay.
um, the new A5,
Yeah.
3.5 inch semi-auto. It's an inertia gun. Um, I don't know that I like it more than the silver. Um, but I do like it. It's it's a good shooting gun.
Good. Good. Yeah, Browning, man. The old A5, that's an old platform that's got a lot of proven history to it. And
Right.
I know guys that shoot Browning. I have a good friend of mine. He's loved his Brownings. Typically can't go wrong with a Browning shotgun, that's for sure. Now, what about shot shells? That's a whole different subject. That's a big – me and you have had discussions on shot shells.
Right.
What kind of shells do you shoot in your Browning?
The last couple of years I've been shooting the Boss, the copper-plated bismuth. I feel like it really does a good job of knocking them down. I feel like you got, when you're shooting them, you got two kind of ducks. You got dead ducks or missed ducks. I don't feel like I've got the cripples like I typically had, maybe, shooting cheaper steel in the past. And maybe it's a mind game, maybe it's not, but one of the things that I tell people, because people are like, man, you crazy for spending that kind of money on shotgun shells. And I tell people, I drive, we've got all this money invested in a boat. We've got all this money invested in shotguns, decoys, camouflage, waders, this, and we get up at 2:00 in the morning to drive 2 hours and then ride in a boat for 45 minutes. And then I get there and I don't bring good shells.
Good point. Very good point.
It just doesn't make sense to me, because I feel like it's not the money. I've already invested all this time and energy getting out there, paddling the Perilloux, setting out decoys. I might as well top it off with some good shells too.
Well, let me ask you this. What's more important in your opinion? Good shells, expensive shells, good shells, or expensive shotgun? That's a tough one. Which one do you think's most important?
Here's my thing with the shotgun. I think you got to shoot the gun that fits you, right? If you put the gun, you can have the most expensive shotgun on your market, and when you put it on your shoulder, if it doesn't fit you right, or you don't feel like your eye is on that bead naturally, then I don't think it's the gun for you.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
If a $300 Remington 870 Express, if you can't mess with it, then I think that's the gun for you.
Yep. Well said. That's a very good point. Because I get that question asked to me pretty often. They're like, man, what do you recommend? Benelli, or Beretta or Browning, whatever it may be. And I'm like, Remington 870. And they're like, what? The young guys that contact us, they'll ask our opinions on that, and they'll contact us through social media, and I'll tell them Remington 870. You can't go wrong. It's reliable. It's affordable. And I tell them, spend a little bit more money on the shot shells, because like you, I've become a huge believer in, the plated bismuth and all that type of stuff over the last couple of years. And you kind of got me turned on to Boss shot shells. You kind of told me the success you were having with it. And man, I couldn't agree with you more. Once I started shooting it, I was like, you're right. You know what? Charlie was right. If we're going to spend all this money on all this other equipment, invest in the shells as well. And let's just, have the best all around opportunity we got to kill ducks, And
what turned me on was hunting with a friend of mine in Texas, and he's like such a firm believer in Boss shot shells. He's like, yeah, I ordered a pallet, and I'm like, what does that mean? I don't know, like 20 cases or something.
Yeah.
But his thing was his wife can only shoot a 28 gauge because of the recoil, but she shoots a 28 gauge and she shoots Boss shot shells. And he says, she kills them just as good as the guys with the 12 gauges are killing them.
Yeah.
So that's the other part is, like back when we were little, the first gun you had was a 20 gauge, right? Because they didn't, even a 410, they didn't have, you had lead, which isn't legal. But now that they've got these shells out there, they've got these different alloys and whatnot to make better shells. Even for my son, I'm going to start him out with a 410 that he can actually, kill ducks with.
Yeah, and my 8-year-old, I had him this year shooting a 410 because it fit him better, the 410, than a 20 gauge did. And thank God for companies like Boss, which, man, Charlie, we giving Boss such good plugs on this episode. Hopefully this gets out to them. Maybe they'll sponsor us. Hook us up. I'm sure everybody talks about them, has good things to say just about. But, yeah, Boss, if you listening, man, hey, throw something down to Louisiana to these boys right here. We'll test them out for you for sure. We'll put them to good use. But no, my 8-year-old though, I had him shooting a 410 this year, and man, go try finding 410 steel shot at your local sporting goods stores. It's damn near impossible. Even Cabela's, Bass Pro, Rogers, all those big those big box stores, it's still tough to find that. I had to go to Boss, and man, I was paying $32 a box, I think, something like that, for 410 shells for him to hunt. But at the end of the day, if you shooting, I had some guys tell me, "Oh man, you crazy to pay that much for a 410 shell." But the way I see it is, at that age, they're not taking 30 shots per hunt. They might be shooting 2 to 5, maybe 6 shots, 10 on a good day, maybe. If they shooting that much. But at that age, they're not going to be shooting that much. So really, that box of shells is going to last them 2 to 3 seasons with that gun until they probably move up to a 20 gauge or so on and so forth. So it's really worth it at the end of the day. And being that young, like you said, when you hit them, they dead. I mean, there's no cripples. So for a youth, that could be his first duck that he shoots, So I think it's definitely worth it for a youth. Spend the money, get them a box of those if that's what you could find and that's what you could afford, and take them out. And chances are, when they have the opportunity, they're going to have a better end result, for a youth hunter. It's shooting 410.
Yeah, I've got a little 410 for my little boy, but my wife keeps reminding me that he's only 4. So, I've shot it with him a couple times outside, but he's still 4. So he's
young.
He's still young. So he doesn't have he doesn't really have the, interest yet, but he will.
That comes. Yeah. I'm a father with some older boys, a little bit older than yours. That's going to come. There's going to hit a point. If you continue to bring him, there's going to be a point where, usually I think for Jackson, he's 14 now, but really when Jackson hit about 9 years old, Charlie, that's when he kind of really started having that interest to keep coming, and kind of, especially duck hunting, because, you could take him squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, stuff that's fast paced, get them introduced to hunting on stuff like that, small game, that they're going to have some action. But duck hunting can be tough, especially public land hunting. You take them and you might not kill a bird, some years, as bad as the seasons were a few years ago. So it's hard to get a youth involved in waterfowl hunting. But once he hit about 9 years old, he kind of started shooting some wood ducks, that type of stuff, and he really got interested at that point. And then where he's at now as a 14-year-old. I mean, he's ate up with it. He's insane. Yeah. That's all he thinks about, Right. So it's definitely, I think it's a good thing to kind of break him in at a young age, get him used to some maybe small game hunting, and you're going to see that he ends up gravitating toward what your dad's hunting at that point, So yeah. Well, man, we're about an hour and 12 minutes into this episode, and I know we try to keep it at about an hour. But Charlie, as we close things out, where once again can potential customers who may be interested in Game Changer boats, giving them a quote on a boat, a custom built boat, whether it's a fishing boat, it's a hunting boat, or whatever they could come up with, a pirogue. If you want to build some aluminum pirogues, Charlie's probably your guy for that also as well. Where can they reach you at once again, Charlie?
Right. So, our website is gamechangerboats.net, and, we're on Facebook and Instagram as Game Changer Boats.
Game Changer Boats, guys. You can find them on social media. Oftentimes you'll see us on our social media platforms posting stuff that has the Game Changer name on it. You'll see pictures on our pages as well. So if you want to reach out to Charlie, you can reach him where he just told you, online, or you could give him a call. Charlie, do you take calls directly as well?
Absolutely.
What's the phone number that people can reach you at, if you don't mind giving that out?
5-974-0960.
Perfect. Well, Charlie, man, it's been an absolute honor, buddy. I'm glad to call you a friend. I thank you so much for finally doing this with us, getting on, because people needed to know about what you do, about the talents that you have, man. It's. I agree with the aluminum salesman that you talked about in this episode. It was time to do your own thing, man, and there's going to be a bright future for Game Changer Boats. So I congratulate you. I'm praying for you. I hope it continues to grow, man. And thank you for being a friend of ours and a friend of the show. We appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invite.
No problem. We're going to do it again, hopefully. Maybe we'll do it before hunting season.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate you coming on. Well, thank you so much, Charlie. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
All right, Jacob, y'all have a good night.
All right, you have a good one. Well, guys, there you have it. Another great guest right here on Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors podcast. I really hope you enjoyed the stories and getting to know Charlie Perilloux. He's a phenomenal guy. If you are in the market for a custom-built hunting or fishing boat, guys, I promise you cannot go wrong. He's located right here in Hammond, Louisiana. And like you said, he has customers that are singing his praises after building boats for them, customers all the way to New York, from coast to coast, really. Right now, he has customers that are placing orders with him. So he's just not here in Louisiana, guys. You can visit him on the web like he talked about. Check out what they have to offer at Game Changer Boats. And I promise you, you will not be disappointed, guys. Well, we have no time left in this episode, so thank you once again for tuning in. You guys can watch this on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. You can visit us on our social media pages. We'll have this episode, if you want video format, on all of our social media pages, including our YouTube page, and anywhere for the audio that you get your favorite podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, it's Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many, many more, guys. Thank you so much for the support that you give us here at Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors. And until next time, this is Jacob signing off. Y'all have a good one, guys. Take care.